Hi, this is Anita from Real Estate Crunch. Today we're going to talk a little bit about landlords, whether you're somebody who's renting, so you have a landlord, or you want to be a landlord. We're going to talk about what are the landlord's rights and what are their responsibilities. This is actually important for anyone who is renting or anyone who is thinking of owning property and becoming a landlord to understand. I'm going to talk about this specifically for the United States. And even though this is for the United States, this could probably be similar in many other parts of the world. But wherever you are in the world, it's really good that you check what the laws and regulations are for wherever you are living. There's a couple key responsibilities that landlords have or that they are able to do. One is they have the right to screen tenants. If you're going to have somebody in your building, they're going to be renting your building, you want to make sure it's the right type of person. The landlords do have the right to screen the tenants to ensure that they're suitable for the rental property. This can include things like background checks, credit checks, employment verification, and reference checks. So if your landlord asks you for this information, they are just doing their job and doing their due diligence. The landlords are responsible to maintain the property in a habitable condition. So this ensures that, essential services such as, heating, plumbing, and electrical are usually what's included in that. Now, in some states, it may be included air conditioning because that state has a law for air conditioning. But you need to understand for which state or for where you're living, what the regulations are. The landlord has the right to collect rent. The rent as it's specified in the lease agreement. The rent is due on the due date, and they have the right to, demand that rent be paid. They are responsible to make necessary repairs. Now, these would be repairs that would make sure that the place is habitable. This could include things like fixing leaks or broken appliances or, types of structural problems. Those could be the repairs that they'll be responsible for. They have the right to enter the property for specific reasons. So they can't enter the property at any time they feel like it. They should not be entering the property at any time they feel like it. But they have the right to enter the property during specific times, such as if they want to make repairs. They want to conduct inspections or showing the property to other prospective tenants because you've decided you're going to move out. And so they could have the right to enter the property to be able, while you're still there, to show to other people. They usually need to provide you at least 24 hours notice to say, I need to enter the property. Unless it's something which is an emergency. And in the case of the emergency, they would not need to give the 24 hours property. Let's say the property's flooding and the landlord happens to live next door and you're gone and they see that, there's water coming out. They would then have the right to enter the property because it would be considered an emergency. The responsibility to provide a safe environment, that the landlords need to ensure that the property is safe for the tenants. This could, include things as smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, and secure locks on the doors and windows. So all these things could be things that, the landlord needs to make sure that the property will be secure. They have the right to enforce the lease terms. You've signed a lease with them. You've made some agreements with them. So they have the right to be able to enforce a lease terms. And if you, fail to pay rent, causing damage to the property, or you're engaged in illegal activities, they have the right to enforce their lease. They have to respect the tenant's privacy. A landlord cannot just enter in any time they feel like it. They need to be able to respect your privacy. We once were renting a place and the landlord lived nearby, and they got very upset when we changed some locks because she wanted to come in anytime we weren't there and come into the property and I guess nose around and see what was going on. We really don't know why, but we did change the lock and they weren't really happy about that, but we had the right because they needed to respect our privacy, that they could not just come in anytime. They do have the right to increase rent, but they must follow the legal requirements for increasing the rent. Typically, the landlord needs to give at least 30 days notice before the rent can be increased, and they need to comply with any type of local rent laws too. So if there's local rent laws where you're at, they need to comply with all of those things. There again, this is why it's good for both tenants and landlords to understand their rights and to understand the laws for the areas in which you are. I cannot say this enough, or I cannot stress this enough, that real estate is, there's basic rules, laws for real estate, but a lot of laws actually have to do with the county or the area that you live. So that's why you need to really understand those laws for the area where you're residing. The landlord has the responsibility to handle security deposits properly, that they need to handle them according to the state and local laws, and this includes providing a written receipt, keeping the deposit in a separate account, and returning the deposit within a specific period after the tenant moves out, minus any deductions or damages or unpaid rent. This, of course, is something that a lot of tenants worry about, and of course, because they've got your security deposit, and are they going to give it back or not give it back, or are they going to find reasons not to? So if you are renting, one of the best things you can do is document it, and make sure they give you a receipt. Demand a receipt. If they don't give you a receipt, make sure you demand a receipt and say, look, I need a receipt. The landlords do have the right to evict tenants for valid reasons. Okay, now here are some of the valid reasons. Non-payment of rent, lease violation, or illegal activities. However, they must follow the legal procedures for eviction, which typically include providing written notice and obtaining a court order. So they can't just, call you up, say, I'm going to evict you tomorrow. It needs to be the entire legal process because you as a renter have rights. The landlord is responsible to provide written lease agreements. This is very important. If your landlord doesn't want to give you a written lease agreement, walk away. You want to have a written lease agreement whenever you rent a property. This is good for you and it's good for them. It can outline both of your rights and what you both agree. And make sure that you, if you are the tenant, that you read through that agreement and you ask any questions that you might have on that agreement before you sign it. This is the thing that a lot of tenants don't do. Maybe they're so excited they finally got this apartment of their dreams, and so they don't check it, they just sign it. You need to check and read through the agreement and make sure you know exactly what you are signing. And if you are not sure, pay the little money to hire a lawyer to read through it with you and to tell you exactly what you're signing. The landlord has a responsibility to comply with fair housing laws. Landlords must comply with fair housing laws, which prohibits discrimination based upon race, color, national origin, religion, sex, familial status, disability, or other protected type of characteristics under the law. Violation of these laws can result in a legal action and penalty. Now, if your landlord suddenly discriminates you because of race, that's something you'd need to be able to prove as to the reason why. Any of these discriminations you'd have to prove as to why maybe suddenly they signed a contract with you and then they saw you in person and decided not to rent to you. You need to be able to prove that if you're going to go to court with that. The landlord has the right to create and enforce property rules. So the landlord can make property rules such as noise level, pet policy, and parking regulations. These rules should be clearly outlined in the lease agreements. So here are some things that landlords should never do. And this is basically on the taboo list. These are things that they should never, ever do. Discriminate against tenants. We've talked about that before, that discrimination is against the law. They should not discriminate against the tenants. Enter without proper notice. Your landlord should not be entering your property while you're at work without letting you know. Your landlord needs to give you proper notice before entering. Evict the tenants improperly. Your landlord needs to go through the proper eviction process if they are going to evict you. Raise rents without notice. They can't just call you tomorrow and say, hey, I'm raising the rent tomorrow. They need to give you notice, and they need to make sure they comply with local rent control laws. We've written a blog on this entitled landlord rights and responsibilities in the United States. So if you're interested to see what the landlord's rights and responsibilities are, or if you're yourself looking to be a landlord, we'll put a description in the link so you can read this blog. And hopefully this can give you some great information on things that you can do or things that your landlord can or cannot do if you are in a rental situation. This is Anita from Real Estate Crunch. Thank you so much for listening. This is Anita from Real Estate Crunch. Thank you so much for being part of our community. We really do appreciate you joining with us and being part of our community. Give us a thumbs up, like us, subscribe. It really does make a difference if you can press that subscribe button and subscribe. It really does help make a difference. And if leave a comment, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for being part of our community.